The newsroom. Yes, it's time for the France 24 debate. Less than 6 weeks to go until the first round of the French presidential election. The incumbent, looking to jumpstart a fledgling campaign, he trails badly in the polls, told a major rally of supporters Sunday from his conservative UMP party that it's time to tighten the screws on the EU's Schengen Open Borders Agreement.
If we don't adapt Schengen in the next 12 months, France will suspend its membership until the changes are made.
It so happens that an overhaul of EU-wide immigration policy is being negotiated. Will these campaign promises impact the policies that will come to pass? We'll be asking our panel. Nicolas Sarkozy also wants an EU equivalent of the Buy America Act. It's a politician's job to heed the call of voters, so in these times of crisis, is it only natural to tighten Europe's borders when it comes to outside immigrants, outside companies? Today in the France 24 debate, we're taking a look at this concept of Fortress Europe. And with us to talk about it is Catherine de Venden. She teaches at France's prestigious Sciences Po Political Science Institute. Also with us from Brussels, Senior Policy Analyst at the European Policy Center, Yves Pascuot. Welcome to the France 24 debate. Welcome back as well to Christian Stoffes, President of the French-German Council of Economic Analysis, and to Yves Bertoncini, who of the Notre Europe think tank, pro-Europe think tank. Thanks for being with us. And thank you for weighing in on the conversation. Lots of you have on the issue of immigration policy, most notably on the France 24 debate Facebook page and on Twitter, where you can find us at François F24. Before we look at the French president's ultimatum, let's try to put this into context. First of all, the timeline. 1 year ago, Europeans witnessed thousands of Tunisians landing onto the shores of the Italian island of Lampedusa. What is the fallout from all of that? The latest Europe-wide numbers date back to the third quarter of last year, according to the European agency Frontex. They say over 38,000 migrants were detected crossing illegally into the EU from July to September. That's an 11% jump over the same period last year, nearly half of those from Turkey to Greece. Let's begin with you, Catherine de Venden. 38,000 illegal migrants. Is that a big number or a small one at the scale of
It is a small number because most of those who arrived in Lampedusa had the idea to come. And with or without the revolution, they would have come to Lampedusa. They just profited with the period because the policemen were occupied in other functions to try to cross the border and to arrive to Europe.
And would you say, as a whole in Europe, that there are few or many illegal immigrants?
It is difficult to say if there are few or many. We could say that there are around 5 million illegal people in Europe, but in the United States...
Out of what, 400 and... How many million people live in Europe?
We have 500 million Europeans of the 27, and we have just 5 million perhaps illegals. And in the United States, we have around 11 or 12 illegals.
For a population of 300 million.
Yes, the proportion is...
It's not a huge number.
No.
Do you agree on that score, Yves Pascuot, that it's not a big number?
Yes, I do. I do agree with Catherine de Venden that the number of illegal migrants coming from Tunisia was not a very high number, in the sense that if you compare the 38,000 migrants that arrived in Lampedusa, you can imagine that it represents only one migrant according to the cities that are existing in France.
Right, so the 38,000, in fairness, Frontex says that's 38,000 for the whole of the third quarter for all of Europe, they say, not just from Tunisia. Let me also ask you, and we can perhaps call up a map of the countries that share the Schengen open border policy for this question. Again, just to explain it all. Schengen Agreement, it's been around for nearly 2 decades, 26 nations and counting. Yves Pascual, explain to us the rules and tell us if they actually work.
Okay, the rules of Schengen are quite simple to understand. It is a story between two member states, France and Germany, that decided that they were fed up in seeing queues of lorries at their common border. So they decided to lift up internal border controls between those two countries, just for the sole reasons that France and Germany were interested one in the other. As a consequence, they decided in Saarbrück to have this common policy where, for instance, a Polish lorry driver who entered Germany was allowed to go to France just because France was entrusting Germany in the border checks it was doing at its external borders. Then after 3 member states, which were already in a kind of situation of that kind, decided to join the France and Germany. So it gave birth to the Schengen area. It means that the Schengen area, which started with 5 member states, is an area where member states taking part of it have a mutual trust, and because of this mutual trust, they are allowing people to move within their own territory. And then after, the phenomenon has expanded, and now we are having 26 states, some member states, and also some states coming from third countries. And we can say, despite what was said by Nicolas Sarkozy yesterday, that the Schengen system functions very well.
All right, you're saying it functions very well, but 26 states, the French president seems to imply that leaves room open to find a weakest link. Many point the finger at Greece. They did so again last week, the Germans and the Dutch. Nicolas Sarkozy, who wants tough love for nations whose border guards get caught napping.
There must be a common discipline for border controls, just as there is a common discipline in public finances in the Eurozone. It must be possible to sanction, suspend, or even exclude a failing state from the Schengen zone, just as it is to sanction a Eurozone state that doesn't abide by its obligations. There must be instruments to manage a crisis, allowing to assist countries confronted to exceptional situations, and a common front in the fight against trafficking of unfortunate clandestine immigrants.
Yves Bertoncini, is that a fair point?
Well, there are the images you've just shown us, and then there are also facts. And of course, both are important. But when looking at the images from Lampedusa, where all started in terms of renegotiate some elements of the Schengen area governance, what was at stake was not only what happened in the Mediterranean Sea after the Arab Spring, it was also more systemic problem and failures, for example, in Greece and in the border between Greece and Turkey. And in this second field, there was a problem of mutual distrust, and it's very important to underline this, and as Yves Pascual just did it, there is a problem of mutual distrust between countries of the Schengen area, 25 countries today. It was not the case probably when only 5 of them, neighbors, having long relations, were concerned. So this is a true problem, mutual distrust.
So last week, the Germans, the Austrians, and I believe the Dutch pointed the finger at the Greeks. Is that fair?
No, it's not that fair, and I would say this is not that, this is different. I mean, if we look at the problems, mutual distrust is something, it's a reality. But if you look at the substantial problem, the one of illegal migration, this is a spectacle. But I mean, the 3/4 of illegal migrants received a visa before entering the EU. They are what we describe as overstayers. So the main source of the problem is the overstayers. And for this, there will be very soon put in place a kind of system, an information system on visa, which was prepared very long ago, which will be put in place at the end of around summer. This is the real solution for the real problem. That is the first point. When dealing with Greece, of course, there is a problem in Greece, not only in Greece. You can also have problems in Roissy-Charles de Gaulle, in Bararas, for air border, because the borders, it's also air borders. You can have problems at the Greece border. But for this, there are also other solutions. The solution is to help Greece. Nicolas Sarkozy mentioned this solution, to help Greece. Greece has been helped in the past. We sent to Greece, and the EU sent to Greece, EU border patrols. Some of the patrols in the Mediterranean Sea, this is for Greece, but also for Italy, are financed, partly financed by the European Union. What I mean is that the answer is more common action, more solidarity. It is not the other option, which was all mentioned as a threat. Maybe it's a tool to put some pressure on the negotiation which is undergoing. But I mean, it's not the option of coming back to national border, which is, I will finish on this, quite surprising when dealing with Greece. Because if the problem is Greece, we can consider that the external border should not be the Greeks one. But I mean, in this case, it's the borders between Slovenia, Hungary, and the rest of Europe. It's not the French borders, because if the French border were to become, again, our borders, our external borders, this would affect, for example, trade between France and Germany, trade between France and Italy, and this would be another story.
Christian Stoffels, give us the economist's view on this. Are there too few or too many illegal immigrants in Europe?
I think the answer to the question depends to whom you pose the question. Some people clearly believe there is a problem. Some people believe there is not. So this is a rule of democracy, that you have a confrontation of opinions. But clearly, we are now facing in Europe a rise of extremism. The level of populist extreme right parties reaches 15 to 20% in many European countries, including North European countries, which have strongly based democratic liberal traditions. So what is the reason for that? Of course, this is you may have different answers, but there is a feeling. Some people believe there are too many immigrants and they are not enough controlled. And this is exactly what Sarkozy addressed. He addressed this fraction of the population. So another issue about, he made a parallel with the euro. You have to make a distinction between the rules and the implementation of the rules. So this is the law.
So just to remind people, saying you could sanction
yes, exactly.
sanction people who don't abide by the
yes,
Eurozone rules. Why can't you sanction people who don't abide by the Schengen rules?
Yes, you can agree on rules, and then you have to implement the rules. So the rule of Schengen is very simple. You have a free traffic of persons within Europe. It's always like that with Europe. You start with small causes, and you end up with big consequences. You started with free trade, and you end up with European Federation. You started with a small-sized problem of lorry drivers crossing the borders, and you finish by the issue of European identity. So nobody wants to question the rule of free traffic of persons within Europe. The question is the control at the borderlines. And some countries, because the implementation of Schengen rests upon national governments, and the issue of visas rests upon the government. Basically, the problem started with Tunisia 1 year ago, with Arab Spring, because the Italian government delivered 25,000 visas without consultation of other countries. And this was the beginning of the problem. Because what Sarkozy said yesterday is not new. It started 1 year ago, because both governments, Italian and French, requested the European Commission to not to renegotiate the Schengen Treaty, but to deepen the rule of implementation. This is the issue.
Catherine de Venden, Christian Stoffels saying it's not new that Sarkozy is addressing this problem. Were you surprised by his statement?
Yes, because there is some contradiction between saying in his discourse we want more Europe, and in the same time we need to renegotiate Schengen, which is Europe, because Schengen are based on the idea of solidarity, of trust between all European countries to control the external borders of Europe. And this,
so for you, it's sending sort of a Eurosceptic message.
Yes, I think so, because there is a coming back of sovereignty in the question of immigration in many European countries, because of the rise of populism, because of the rise of extreme right who want more state And I think the symbol is to introduce more state, more visibility of the state at the borders if we renegotiate the Schengen system based on solidarity and common patrols on the external borders of Europe.
Yves Pasquot, do you agree that remarks like those we heard earlier from the French president sap the authority of Brussels?
I don't know if it sacks the authority of Brussels. I just want to underline some elements that were quoted just before. And I just want to come back on what was said by Yves Bertoncini on the mutual distrust. Nicolas Sarkozy is in a position where he is making mutual distrust growing. First point. Second point, is he running or not behind the far right? This is also an issue. But second point, I think that this mutual distrust is very harmful for the Schengen area because for the first time we are in a position where member states, some of them, and France is taking the lead on that, wants to impose sanctions on member states rather than solidarity, as it was underlined by Yves Bertoncini just before. So we need to be very careful on that idea, is that from mutual trust to cooperation, we are slowly sliding on the path of mutual distrust and on sanctions. And here, the speech that was given by Nicolas Sarkozy yesterday was clear on that point, and he was one of the numerous people we can hear around the Schuman Square here in Brussels that are starting to point out the idea that we can exclude some member states, namely Greece in this case, from the Schengen zone. And there is also another point which is very worrying, is the link that has been made by Nicolas Sarkozy between the euro crisis and the Schengen situation. The euro crisis was and still is a very important crisis that needs to be tackled and addressed unless we will be facing huge problems. This is not the case for the Schengen area, where problems are minor and they do not call for such hard and very straightforward solutions.
All right, so they shouldn't be put on the same footing. We're going to pick up on that point when we return and look at some of his economic proposals for Fortress Europe. This is the France 24 debate.